Here's part 2 of our most recent Legal AI Live on LinkedIn. If you missed part 1, make sure to go subscribe at legalailive.com and check out our YouTube channel or Legal AI Live on any podcast app to catch part 1. Follow the Legal AI Live page on LinkedIn to watch us live. Without further delay, here's part 2.
What you just described is human in the loop. That is, Dennis is in the loop, and Matthew is on the loop. That is, you're onto this. And then there's also the next on automation is human in control, where you just let the AIs do it all by themselves. So essentially, you just described the 3 types of agency.
Yep. So I guess that the agentic AI was kind of a big phrase this year, and we'll see more of it. And I think it's a huge issue in law because the whole world is moving toward agentic AI. And when I say, I think every law school should offer a class in agency law because that's the coming thing, people just laugh at me. And so I don't even say it anymore. But when we think about agentic law, or agentic AI, which has a lot of meanings, what are the things that you are starting to use and what benefits do you see from it that really, to you, feel like agents? Matthew, put you on the spot, or do you want me to go in reverse order?
Well, Kim complained about it last time, so how about we make Kim go first this time? No. Okay. She's saying no. Okay. All right. So for agentic stuff, I mean, the Comet browser is what I think of when I think of agentic, like actually working the way you want it to. Anything I could do in a web browser, Comet browser can do. Now that's dangerous in a lot of ways, right? Because it's like, okay, like prompt injection and some other issues. And I watched, I can't remember his name, but the CEO of Perplexity was interviewed by the University of Chicago, and it's on their YouTube channel. Highly recommend. And he talks about this, right? And like they're always trying to fight that, but still not willing to like integrate my law firm stuff with Comet browser yet. But if you could do it in a web browser, like these MCPs, model context protocol things, like if it's just doing that inside of Claude or ChatGPT, like, but it's stuff you could just do in a web browser, you don't even need that. You could just do it using Comet and it will work. And it's like, oh, it doesn't know what to do. So you can watch it thinking, and it's like, oh, it's going to the FAQ page. Oh, it's going to Reddit. Oh, it's going to YouTube. And it's trying to figure this thing out that you tasked it to do. And so it's like truly agentic in that it will go figure out how to do the thing you assigned it to do, and it will go do it. And if it could do it in a web browser, it could do it.
Greg, I suspect that you've been looking at the agentic stuff in arbitration law, so I'm curious what your thinking is on this.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about agentic AI, I'm thinking more of the underlying architectures where you build lots of little agents to do different tasks in a more complex workflow. But if we're talking just about, wrappers or tools with a UI, really the one that I've been using most isn't law related. It's just this thing called Gamma that allows you to build presentations. I'm a person who actually likes building PowerPoint presentations, and I probably spend too much time tweaking the design. And so it's been a big time saver for me that I just, write out an outline and upload it, and it just spits out the presentation. It's not always perfect, but you can download it in PowerPoint format and then tweak it from there. And so I think that's pretty high value from a productivity standpoint.
And then Ben, I guess both from what you're doing now and from your experience at Microsoft, what are you seeing and what are you using in agentic and sort of what's your general assessment of where we are in it?
I think it, and I don't know if this is a relic of my days at Microsoft, but I think I have overly high expectations maybe of what agentic should be. And so for me, like I'm not using much in my daily use today that I would consider to be truly agentic. A lot of it's maybe called an agent, but to me it just feels like a really good prompt. It may be scheduled, but I don't know. A scheduled prompt doesn't feel that agentic to me. I think we're very early days, but I think with the pace of what we've been seeing, I think 2026 may be the year that we finally start to see some usable, reliable, actually agentic things, that are useful. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic. Right? I mean, not pessimistic, but too cynical with where we are today, I guess. We put that way.
There's a lot of hype with agents.
A ton of hype. Yeah.
So, Anna, how about you? And it's how agents started to affect you?
Yeah, I think I'm the Luddite of this group. I've kind of used the same platforms over the last year and seen them improve. What I've liked about having ChatGPT kind of tell me what it's doing and following its process is I can refine my prompts so that if it just keeps going to Wikipedia, I can tell it to start going to other types of websites and pulling from other things. So I found that to be useful. But to be completely honest, I feel like it's actually distanced me from the technology because I could kind of understand what was going on with generative AI before, but now like I just don't get the black box of all of the system machine learning that's happening. It's just really hard for me to wrap my head around how fast it's moving and what the process is that I'm seeing before my eyes.
And Damien.
I would say that because life is a PowerPoint, I'm going to quickly talk while I show my PowerPoint, but I say that, definitions matter for lawyers. And so this is the best definition I've found is that it's a tasks linked dynamically. And if you define it that way, then we've been using agents for years. My friend Mike Bomarito said that, if you have a goal and then the agent perceives and acts upon that goal, that's what people do. That's what thermostats do. That's what software do. So that is, in a sense, agentic. But then you have agentic software that iterates, adapts, and terminates. That's TurboTax, right? That is a rule-based system that is agentic in a sense, because in a sense, it gets the work done, right? Yeah, automatically. But what we've been talking about recently is agentic AI. That is large language models that do these things programmatically using a large language model. So I think number one, we should define what an agent is. And, if we acknowledge that humans are agents, Dennis, you talked about having agent law. My joke in the comments was we've had that for decades, and it's called business organizations. That is, I as an employee am an agent of the employer, right? And so really, as we think about if we define agency, we could be able to think about, okay, if I take a bunch of prompts and string them together as a human, is that agentic? Well, kind of. Now, if I make that into a LangChain and do it programmatically, is that agentic? Yeah, but I've just automated my agency. So I would say that we all need to think about what are the workflows that we do and what are the tasks that we need to change together, maybe dynamically, and we will be able to build more agents ourselves.
So episodic reminder that Damien shared his screen again. He can't help himself. So if you're just listening to this on a podcast app, we are on YouTube, we're live on LinkedIn, and you could go to legalailive.com and you could see all the videos there. Okay.
Life is a PowerPoint.
Yes, agreed.
Kimberly, put you on the spot again.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Damien, following you all the time. But I agree that I was like, well, how are we defining it? I think when we define it the way I hear people talk about it, like do all these things on its own and it's thinking and then, there's pushback. Is it thinking? Because it's not, it's out, whatever. Same to Anna, like there's a point at which, okay, I've tapped out on some of the like underpinnings of this, but I don't think it's ever thinking. So depending on how we define it, then I can see that we've moved closer towards allowing for us to bring the way we think in a more systematic way that then allows us to scale that thinking to serve more people, to impact more things. So in that sense, I could see movement on it. I don't, in that sense, then yeah, I use it every single day and a lot of different things. Sure, Fidu has it too, because if they're depending on how you define it, but I think we're still quite early. And I think I'm more focused on how do we make sure we still create a better legal industry specifically, because I just think all of the talk gets lost in what's our goal as an industry sometimes, and that we're practically, I can't test all the tools, right? When I was practicing, I had more time to do it. Now as a founder, I have a lot less time to test all the tools, but I really just want to see us move the needle on the problems that we've yet to solve in the past version of our industry. And if all these things don't do that, then I actually don't care. Not to be that dramatic about it, but I think that's what I want to see. So I don't know. I feel like we all touch it if we define it the way Damien says, and then we've seen it in a lot of things. But I think it's still so early to see the impact long term. And I don't know if that actually answered the question, because sorry.
Oh, that's great. Gio.
I'm sitting here amazed at, first of all, Anna and Kimberly's comments bookended what Damien told us about remarkably simplistically, from the fear of it to the unknown aspect of it. And then in the technical description that Damien gave us, and now Kimberly kind of grounded us again on this and reminding us, this does not think. It's a tool, and we have to keep remembering that it is a tool. And I'm profoundly confused and in awe of what is happening around us consistently. I don't know. I've said this before. I don't know if I fear for our practice more than I fear for our humanity.
Yeah, I always say that AI kind of brings us to the most fundamental questions, like incredibly quickly, which is why it's kind of fun. So when I think about agentic, it's interesting to me because we've had these sort of variations of agentic or agents, over the years in browsers, smart contracts, those sorts of things. So the AI agents are interesting to me for a number of reasons. Some of them go back to work I did at MasterCard and stuff. I was talking to someone and I said, "Oh my God, AI agents like just take away the need, potentially take away the need for APIs because the agents can do the structuring for you." And so I think there's a lot going on. But then then I been part of conversations with people who are developing like thousands of agents, probably as we speak, and they're talking about like, do the agents need to report into HR? Like, does HR have to supervise them? Like, how do we keep them, in line with policies? Which is why I say I think we should have, classes in this, because I think this is going to be the growth area in law. But then I think of the things that I'm trying to do with personas that are in their way a form of agentic. And I realize that with any degree of sophistication, they get really hard to control. And so I see agents as a sort of, if it does one thing for you, that's awesome, right? So you say, if I had this AI agent that said, "Do you want to pay with this credit card?" And I say yes, and then the transaction actually happens, and I don't have to type things in or do a password or something, that's awesome. But if you say the agent is going to go out, it's going to select the product, it's going to do all these things, it's going to make decisions, it's going to enter into agreements, and it's going to pay not with my credit card, but like draw out of my bank account, I can't go there, right? I'm like, no, I don't see how this can work. So to me, it's really interesting to say, how can we look at something that to me has to stay with these sort of very, limited purpose agents, and then how do we control those? And so it's interesting. Like I said, outside of law, our people are thinking like, should agents just be part of the HR department in companies? Really fundamental question. To say, and how do we build these policies into them? Yeah, Kimberly.
One of my thoughts here is like, as we're thinking about this in an industry that helps create laws and drives policy, that we need to be more cognizant of, should it be replacing? Like, what if, I'm a tech founder, what if tech tools stop giving access to or block a certain type of agent from using something? Like, we are thinking it's all going to be accessible for all of us, but will it be, right? Will the tools allow other tools? Data is the biggest thing that every tool wants to make sure they're holding on to. So then what happens when everyone starts locking down their tools? So then are these agents even going to be impactful? Or should an agent be reporting to HR? No, because we never want an agent to truly have the ability to replace a person as we're thinking about it. Does that open up new opportunities? Sure, but I think what we saw at the top of the year with all these companies cutting jobs because, AI is going to do all these things, and then it messed up because you needed the human oversight. I think as we move in this agent conversation, we should be, I guess my hope is that we're really clear. It's not meant to replace people. It's meant to augment people, to give us more access to do more things. Maybe that means we don't need a 5-day work week anymore, and we have 3-day work week. Great, amazing. But I think back to the definition part, we should start, and maybe as industries, and maybe say, this is how we're not going to allow you to use an AI agent in the tool. If it can take an action, a human really needs oversight, we don't allow you to do it. And maybe that's dramatic, but it's just some thoughts out there that I think we should be having.
I wonder if as the agents get better and more capable, like a year ago, they had doctors do a thing, and then they had the robots do the thing, and then they had doctors plus the AI do the thing. And the doctors plus AI did better than either of them separately. That was a year ago. But 2 months ago, the robots alone beat the doctors plus AI, because the humans would actually overrule what the robot got right. And so as the agents get better, I wonder, Kimberly, whether what you say is actually accurate, because if this right now, the robot is better than the human. So do we want the humans alone to be able to do a thing that maybe the robot beats it in? And that's today in the year of our Lord 25. But now go to 2028 or 2030 when it's 2x or 5x or 10x better than us.
Well,
I think we have to think about what our value is.
I agree that no, you do want the robot to do it. I think how we train and teach people has to also adjust. And I think that's what's not adjusting, right? We're expecting to learn the same way when we're letting a tool do something different. And so our educational system has to adjust. Our continuing education system has to adjust, right? I think that's why we'll get stagnant and we won't learn from our mistakes if we're not. I think the apprenticeship model that is legal now needs to take over. It actually needs to be a thing, right? It can't be what we used to do. And I think my coming up in my career definitely was learn by water hose, figure it out on your own, try to ask a mentor to tell you something, but they need to make money. So how much time can they give you? So we really need to, like, a lot of people are worried about what's going to happen with junior associates. Train them better. You actually have to put money into development. And I think, yeah, so that's where I'm at.
And I agree with Damien and Kimberly's points. And but to Kim's, if we move to 3 or 4 day work weeks, how we're going to lose time for us to bill hours. Oh my gosh, what were our business model will collapse and crumble. How are we supposed to survive as an industry?
No.
So
After 15 years of not billing by the hour, I have so many thoughts.
Yeah, me too.
And
That's all. Those are other podcasts out there.
Matthew, there's this whole thing about subscription law now. You should look into that.
maybe I'll check it out. Same with Kim.
So I want to shift to something. Actually, this is just a follow up. So this is the education piece, and I want to bring it up in this way. So Laura Jeffers Greenberg posted on LinkedIn this morning about just a chart keeping track of all the AI models and the updates in 2025. And so she shows how it happened. And when you look at what the models were like in the early part of the year, you're like, Gemini 2.0, Chat GPT 4.1, that kind of thing. Gemini 2.5 Flash. So 15 major releases just from the 3 leading vendors in 12 months. And so there's a lot happening, and it's still the case. And somebody's welcome to correct me, but I keep hearing that most lawyers are using the free version of ChatGPT still, and that's across the board. That's in business as well. That's the most used AI tool is the free version of ChatGPT. So you sort of feel that with all these new models being pushed out, it's really hard to keep up. And a lot of things are happening. It's almost like we're not talking the same language anymore. And before I got on here, I did the same thing in Gemini and the same thing in Claude. And the results were so vastly different. It was unbelievable to me. So I guess the question is, and I think this is both 2025 and 2026, is how should we keep up? And how do we teach people? And what are we doing? And Matt, you're smiling because I'm gonna call on you first. But so what are your thoughts on that, Matt?
Well, they should stay tuned to Legal AI Live, continuing into 2026. Obviously, every panelist who's ever been on is welcome back. And if you're I get inbound emails, minimum 1 a day, with people asking to come on this panel, by the way. And it's usually people trying to sell something, right? Or they wrote a book, or they're training lawyers how to use AI or whatever. And look, some of us might do that stuff, right? But we don't just let anybody come on the panel, but we are interested in having more panelists. So the right way is to participate in the chat or give a really good presentation like Anna did, and we'll invite you on. And so pay attention, follow people who are talking about it. I'll tell you what, he hasn't been on, but Tyson Mutrich's Maximum Lawyer podcast, he does these Saturday shows, and they're pretty much exclusively dedicated to cool, fun new AI tools that he's using. And that's awesome. And I know he's paying people to teach him and train him how to use AI. So that's another great place to go. I listen to the A16Z podcast, and it's not legal specific, and I don't listen to every episode because it's ridiculous. They flood your feed. But when they have someone on there, they just had Ilya, the guy who left OpenAI to go start his own
Ilya
safety.
Sutskever.
Yes. And he doesn't give interviews. And so that's a really interesting place to go to like find some really good guests. I'm listening to Pioneers of AI, which is through Masters of Scale. And again, not legal specific, but and I don't have time to listen to all these episodes, but also what's really great if they have a YouTube channel, you put that YouTube video into a Notebook LM, and you can say, hey, give me the top 5 takeaways from this for me, would you? And it will give them to you. And you can make a podcast about that podcast in shorter form and consume it all in 2 minutes. So like that's where I'm going to like stay up to date on all these things. And there are a lot of like splintered groups, sort of like Maximum Lawyer, Ernie, who I thought would be here with us, Ernie, the attorney today. I guess he can't make it. He has like a lawyer group that I'm part of. And like we talk about new tools. Like I learned about Whisperflow from Ernie. And I fought like downloading and using Whisperflow. And so like, and I don't know where I ever would have learned that other than from Ernie, because I don't hear people talking about it. And it's amazing. You talk instead of type, and you just hold down 2 buttons on your keyboard and you could just talk your stuff instead. And when interfacing with AI, it's really nice. And think Text Expander. It's got the Text Expander version, but for voice. Put in my work address, and it will just put in your work address, right? So like join these, find these communities of lawyers who are doing stuff, and like join those groups. Anyway, I could say more, Dennis, but I'll leave it there.
And then, Greg, what about you? I mean, you're an internal think tank, and so you probably have. I say education is probably job one for you. But what are the things that you were doing and that you would suggest for others to kind of just stay up with what really is a deluge of new AI announcements?
Yeah, I think that you really have to first think about what you are most interested in and focused on, and then find niche verticals to serve you information. For instance, I've been a big fan of Substack this year and subscribed to a lot of content there. I pay for some of it. One in particular is this company called Every, and they have just incredible deep dives. It's kind of developer focused, but they build a lot of really interesting tools as well that you get access to. But I've found some of my best insights from that newsletter. So that's personally one of my favorites.
And Ben?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have a lot to add to what the folks ahead of me have already said. I'm an avid podcast listener for sure, but I think also just one thing I'll suggest to people is especially attorneys is don't feel like you have to stay up to date on every the minute to minute developments, because when are you going to practice law, right? I mean, at some point you have to do your job, and so if you're going to hold yourself to the standard of, oh my God, I went to bed and I didn't hear about the 74 different developments that released today. I mean, give yourself a break, right? The things that are important will come. But I would say podcasts and RSS feeds are probably the 2 ways that I try to keep up with it. It's my job to keep up with it, and even I can't keep up with it. So give yourself a little grace and don't feel like you have to know about every single thing, every single minute.
And Anna, because you have sort of the twin issue of, faculty keeping up plus students keeping up. So what are the things that you are trying to do for yourself, and I guess for your students as well?
Yeah, it's super tricky. I mean, I teach remedies, federal courts, pretrial civil litigation, comparative law, and an AI class. And like, that's a lot of things to keep up on. And the AI class is 1 credit out of like, I don't know how many credits I just listed. And so would a law student want someone to teach them federal courts that's up on federal courts or that's up on AI? I would think up on federal courts, right? So I have a very limited bandwidth. And so what I do is kind of like what I was talking about with my translation apps and my sort of trying to understand what the Westlaw and Lexis are doing as the technology is moving really quickly is kind of like how I can keep up on the technologies in the workflows that I need to be in. And then for my research, I think it's exactly what Greg just said. It's like, I am particularly interested in attorney use and ethics. That's what I write in. And I'm also really interested in like making sure that we don't have widespread automation bias and complacency for graduates, and that, University of Montana law graduates know how to think, know how to write, know how to pass a bar, and have some subject matter expertise as they move into practice so that they can utilize the tools as agents, as we've talked about. So that's a long way of saying, pick a lane and try to find the technologies in the workflows that are part of your responsibilities and ignore the rest.
And Damien?
I think that YouTube and podcasts have replaced writing for a lot of this, because writing is a lossy medium, because writing lacks the emphasis, my voice just raised. It also lacks pauses. So I think that podcasting and YouTube actually fill in those gaps in a way that writing hasn't. And you can also transcribe them. So you actually get the best of both worlds. So between YouTube and Snipped, SNIPD, I would say that that has really transformed my podcasting. So A16Z, as Matthew said, Anthropic, OpenAI, Center for Humane Technology, they're doing really great things. Every, I will second that from Greg. AI Daily Brief is really good as a podcast. AI Explained, AI in the Future of Law. That's Bridget McCormick from AAA. Shout out to Greg in AAA. And then also Lodroid from my friend Tom. These are some of my short list of really good podcasts and YouTube videos.
Oh, by the way, I'll second the recommendation for Snip. That's my daily podcast app.
Ah, nice. Kimberly.
Yeah, I will third every. Blaine, my co-founder, uses that, and he's the one who told me about it or looks at it. I think there's a bunch of good suggestions here, so no need to reiterate. What I'll say is find communities that are outside of legal and see what they're using. Because I think the other thing we need to do is remember what our clients are doing. I think the big thing that happens to me in this conversations around legal around AI is everyone makes it bad that their clients are using it, but they're going to be, and they are. So go see what your clients are using and see what other people are just day to day using. And maybe it doesn't have to impact your business, but it can impact your life in other ways. And then that gives you the space to do other things in your business. And I would also, find a mastermind that you can join, that you can learn from. That's a good place for me. I'm a part of a mastermind that's not legal at all related. And I learn a ton of tools that never touches half of our conversations because of them. And then I think don't get caught up in the noise. I agree. You have to do your work, for me, it's really work to focus on what I need to use it for and where am I finding pain points in my current life personally. In my founder role, then I'm thinking of what are the pain points in my customer's life. So those are the two spaces. So I would say find the spaces in your life where it makes sense and focus on those. And then go to conferences, get out, meet people, have conversations, at least 2 conferences a year that have some, you don't have to go to an AI specific one, but every conference interacts with it. So I think if you do that, you'll stay up to date.
Yeah, these are great suggestions. What I usually start students with is although it's kind of funny because I know this year they will say, well, this is kind of old, but is Ethan Mollick's book Co-Intelligence, I just think is the great starting point for people, want to learn how to practically use AI. So I think that's great. I think the sort of kind of really slim down what you're trying to learn. So I used to say this about social media too. People say, like, should I blog? Should I podcast? It's like something's going to work for you and you should stick to that. Don't try to do everything because it's basically nobody can do that. So the way I use AI, I don't use video or other things like that. That would be like a gigantic new thing for me to learn. And I don't have anything that makes me want to do that. And so Clayton Christensen has this great notion of jobs to be done, which if you've been around me, you've probably heard me mention like a zillion times, but it's like, which is figure out what job you're hiring the AI to do and then, what do I need to do? And will the AI do this? And that is the way to go. So I think to do that, so it's sort of like, it's almost like you do have to do some narrowing and say, like, I want to get good at one tool and I can't, if ChatGPT 4 is really working for me, I don't need to go to 5.2 on the first day. It's just going to be different. And, some of the things that I like to do won't work. So Matthew, I think we ran out of time, right?
Yeah, we're over time. Damien had to drop, Gio had to drop. Thank you so much for coming. I did want to. I'll stick around a little extra, but to go over stats for the year because this is the Wrapped season. So I'm happy to go through Wrap. But before we do that, I just want to thank Kat Moon for participating in the chat, and she's been on the panel. Jay McAllister, Dennis did a lot of participating. We also had Catherine Bamford for participating in the chat. Thank you all so much for participating. This is a live show. We love to have involvement from the live show. So Dennis, if you we go around the horn for people to say their goodbyes, where people could find them and all that.
Okay, great. So let's go in the reverse order as I see it. So Kimberly, how can people learn more about you and find you?
Sorry, I had to move the light. You can find me across social favorite platforms of LinkedIn or Threads. I want to say Blue Sky, but I haven't gotten it going. But reach out. FaduLegal.com. Hello@FaduLegal.com is the best way to email me. And I'm here to talk AI, here to talk subscriptions, here to talk flat fees. Been leveraging technology from day one. And I think the only thing you could do is just get curious and be creative. And see what it will do for your business and for the people that surround you.
And Anna.
Yeah, LinkedIn, University of Montana Law School website, SSRN webpage. Thanks for the talk. I enjoyed it.
Right. And Ben?
Yeah, probably the best way to find me is LinkedIn. I'm also increasingly active on Blue Sky. I'm Ben Shore in both of those places, so I'm pretty easy to find.
And Matthew?
Yep, and I'll just say Greg Kuchansky had to drop, so thank you, Greg. AAA, he's active on LinkedIn. Follow him too. Matthew Kurbis. My law firm is subscriptionattorney.com. The podcast is lawsubscribe.com, and if you want to follow past episodes of this series, you could try to find it on LinkedIn, but you could also just go to legalailive.com.
And I'm Des Kennedy. You can find me on heavy on LinkedIn. Kennedy Mile Report podcast. We're doing some really cool things. A couple of people, actually a lot of people on my screen in front of me have been on the podcast in the last year. So easy to find. And I love hearing what's going on with AI, and especially in the world of legal education and helping the students out, because they're going to change the world in good ways, I think.
Awesome. So that's a wrap of the show, I guess. For next episode, we have a 5 Friday month, so it will either be on the 9th or the 16th. Sometimes if we do it on the second Friday when it's a 5 Friday month, it's too long in between monthly episodes. So stay tuned to all of us on LinkedIn for when that next Legal AI Live is coming. And then I'll just go quickly through some stats for the year. So this was a show that Dennis and I conceived being part of a private lawyer group of lawyers and educators and coaches that we were like, wouldn't it be great to have this conversation in public? So that started in January. We didn't Dennis had the idea for me to chop it up into halves and publish it in 2 episode bursts. So you get 30 minutes in arrears if you're not joining us live. And so I think the first episode or 2 might have just been the full episodes. Then after that, we published them in parts 1 and parts 2 for the podcast feed. And so the numbers don't perfectly line up. We also don't really promote this other than on LinkedIn. I don't do any promo for the podcast. I barely edit it and I throw it up there. So looking at the numbers here, we have, according to Substack, through Substack, we have 915 downloads over, again, 12 shows, but it's kind of I think it totals, well, it's 11 shows because this doesn't include the stats from this show. So for 11 shows, which is 18 episodes, because again, we didn't do parts right away, 915. If you factor in the privacy settings of people's phones, you're supposed to add up to a third. So really, it might be more like 1,200. Then for newsletter reads, which are not the same thing as, because I always push out the top 5 takeaways via newsletter, via Substack, we have 1,450 reads of that. And this, again, new show, we barely do any promo. Spotify is only 1% of our audience at 84 downloads over the 18 episodes that have been published there. Apple represents 53% and there are different numbers. So in the world of podcasting, if you actually did the numbers, they don't all add up. So this is what we have to do. 676 downloads on Apple. On YouTube, we actually have the most independent downloads, which is not part of the other numbers I already gave. We have over 1,200, 1,200 plus views on YouTube. And then on LinkedIn, and this is why we do it live on LinkedIn, and it's hard to get the exact amounts. So if you look at view counts versus member reach, impressions, so I just looking at view counts only of how many videos have been viewed, we had over 4,015 views over 11 lives. And, even if we just, repeat that, right? That's, so we'll divide that by 11 because we don't have today's. And hang on a second, equals that divided by 11. So 365. So even if every same person tuned in every single time, we have almost, enough listeners that there are days in the year. So that's pretty, just on LinkedIn. So that's exciting. So all in all total, we have approaching 9,000 total views, downloads, whatever you want to call them, across platforms for a brand new show. And on Spotify Wrapped, what's cool is they give you other stats that you can't normally get in the analytics. So people who listen to Legal AI Live, the music they listen to, the top 5 are Tom Petty, Hermanos Gutierrez, Drake, Anuv Jain, and Mind Enterprises. And then the top shows, if I was Damien, I'd be sharing my screen right now. What am I doing? But I just want to get through this fast. The other podcasts that they listen to, who listen to Legal AI Live, Diary of a CEO, All In, Fratello.com, which I haven't heard of, What Now with Trevor Noah, and Bella Table, which is also one I'm not familiar with. So that's interesting. And then some other stats here for shows that launched okay, so there's some other stats I have to get through first. Oh yeah, here we go. We launched in 2025. And so it compares us to all other shows that launched in 2025 on Spotify. And we were in the top 35% of new shows on Spotify in terms of podcasts. So we were more popular than 65% of other new podcasts on Spotify, which is wild for doing this thing monthly and live and not having any script or anything. I think is great. And having a rotating panel too. So that's it. I mean, I don't know. Anyone else on the panel want to chime in on those stats?
You know, when we originally talked about this, right, we're going to be happy if we had like 6 people listen. So
I call it a success. So again, we're going to continue this into next year, and who knows, maybe I'll even try to do some proper SEO and stuff. We'll see. We'll see about that. So that's it. Thanks everybody for doing this. More in 2026. Let's see if there's any more. Nope, no more chats, and everybody has left. We have no more actual attendees live, so maybe they didn't care. Okay, this is just for the people on the panel. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, I'll turn off the stream and stuff now. Okay.
all right.
All right.